Felicitations, adventurers. Welcome to Roll for Felicity. Hopefully you can hear us. I heard that you didn't hear any booing, but I should have changed it so that you can hear booing. We'll see. We'll see if you can't. It's been a while since my last stream, so please tell me if there are any sort of technical difficulties. But welcome to Over the Table. I'm Taylor Felicity, and I have scoured the internet, but mostly Reddit, for stories about TTRPGs for us to provide our unsolicited opinions, advice, and commentary. Today, I'm here with Madam Ava Couture and Kitty Stryker, and we are going to be talking about mostly conflict this episode. Not all conflict, but a lot of table conflict. So I'm going to throw it over to my guests today so they can introduce themselves and talk about their experiences with TTRPGs and also just their experiences with managing interpersonal conflict. And I'm going to throw it over to Ava first to introduce herself.
Hello, my darlings and dears. My name is Madam Ava Couture, or you can just call me Ava for short. I use she, her pronouns, and I've been in the TTRPG space. I've been playing TTRPGs for like about 8 years, and in the actual play space for like two. My relationship with conflict is I'm a black lady in this space, and I'm usually team mom and hold the brain cells. Of course, it's going to be conflict, and I have to deal with it.
Of course. Kitty, I'll throw it over to you to introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, I'm Kitty Stryker. I use she, her pronouns. I have been a tabletop RPGer since I was wee, but I've sort of come in and out of it. Recently, I've been playing pretty regularly, like several times a month for the past, I don't know, 6 years maybe. And I do occasional like actual play stuff, but mostly I'm just playing in home games. I consume a ridiculous amount of tabletop RPG content, Worlds Beyond Number, Dimension 20, Bombarded, Rude Tales of Magic, etc., etc., etc. So many different things. Rotating Heroes, I'm just catching up on. It's great. I absolutely love tabletop RPGs. I often introduce myself to new people by playing Fiasco with them, which is one of my favorite tabletop RPGs.
Good choice.
Love a GM-less game. And that is a game that is all about conflict. You lean heavily into conflict. The whole point of the game is conflict. I love conflict. I have lots of friends who are really like conflict averse and are avoidant. Not me. I plunge headfirst into conflict. I love it. I love picking it apart. In my copious free time, I am a consent educator. I will have a book coming out called Say More Consent Conversations for Teens that's coming out in April. So, like, I'm all about explaining to people various ways to relate to conflict where maybe there doesn't have to be a good guy and a bad guy. Maybe there are some compromises. Maybe there are some ways that we can approach this that look at it from a different perspective. And sometimes somebody is just a jackass. So, I mean, like, that is also a possibility. I try to make sure that yeah, like, I think as a fat femme especially, I'm expected a lot to be that mom, and I am not a mom. I have no interest. I'm more of an uncle, if anything. So, like, I'm much more like, well, okay, so that kid punched you. Did you punch them first? That's kind of how it works on the streets, kid. Like, that's how I approach conflict, is like, there are consequences for your actions, and I'm not interested in protecting you from them necessarily. But I do want to explain, like,
yes,
there are reasons why this is happening.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is unfair, but there's usually a whole power dynamic in place and environmental influences, etc., etc. So
yes, I'm very excited to hear both of your opinions on some of these stories. I will say some of these stories, in my opinion, there is a good guy and a bad guy. Some of them are a little bit more nuanced.
I mean, I think a tabletop it also is like there are boundaries that should have been in place that you're like, well, okay.
My goal for today is to find out which one of these can I blame Ronald Reagan on, because at the end of the day, It always goes back to
Yeah,
Ronald Reagan.
that's true.
It really does.
That's
Yeah.
very true. Cool. I do have Melanie in chat is wondering where can people get this book. I believe, Melanie, the link to pre-order Kitty's book
Yeah, it's pre-order
is
now.
Yeah, and I believe that I've used the right link. It's bookshop.org. Kitty, if I'm
It looks
if I
like
have the wrong
this.
one- Oh,
It's so
hey!
cute. I know. I'm so happy with it. And there's this really great picture of me on the back that a friend of mine took with a bunch of their jewelry. They make lots of cool jewelry.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. Anyway,
I think I
total
just
side
put the-
tangent.
No, that's fine. I think I just redid the guests like command in chat. So I believe that one of the links for Kitty is a way to pre-order her book. And okay, so the other thing I was gonna say, there are some things that you can do in chat. Also I should say hello, the lore mistress. Thank you so much for the follow, Kat. It's good to see you in chat. So some different things you in chat can do during the game or during the I'm so used to it being a game. During the stream. Is if enough different people during a story say boo in chat, just type the word boo. If enough different people in a certain span of time do that, a boo sound effect will be played that everyone should be able to hear, chat and players. If enough people say, I think it's yay or cheer in chat, like if it's like, oh, this is good advice, or this story is a good story, whatever, in enough time, then cheering sound effects can be heard, both by us in the call and then also everyone on stream. So keep that in mind. Another thing that people can do is I do have a Twitch fundraiser going right now for Palestine Children's Relief Fund. This is not like specifically a charity stream, but as I'm getting back into like streaming regularly, I'm just gonna have that ongoing because, as I'm sure everyone in chat knows, there's a lot of genocide happening in Palestine right now. And the Palestine Children's Relief Fund provides free medical care to children in Gaza and the West Bank. So that you should, if you're watching, where you would normally be able to subscribe to me, there should be a button now that says like donate to the cause, and then there's also at the top of chat a little thing for the fundraiser. And if you donate to it during the stream, then I will get like a notification, a little thing will pop up, so it'll be great. Also, if you have your own stories that you want to have read on a future stream, people are saying yay, we'll see if my command is actually working and sound effects happen. You can submit your own stories to the stream. We won't read it during this specific stream because I won't be checking the form while I'm also actively streaming, but on future streams, you'll be able to see that. I will be giving content warnings as necessary for the stories. I think only one of them has a specific content warning, but most of the stories today do have to do with interpersonal conflict. So that is something that we will be talking about a lot during this stream. So, without further ado, I'm going to actually just get into reading our very first story of the stream. This one is from r/D&D, and the title of the story is My Party Hates My Character's Quirks. So, just right away.
I already judged this person.
It's already a
okay.
50-50. 50-50 right now. It's 50-50.
Okay, so the story goes. So I was inspired to make a cleric, and I can't lie, I get deep into RP. My paladin, so they say cleric, but I think the character's actually a paladin. My paladin has this sense of duty that he should use his blessing for the less fortunate, aka he cures sick NPCs with all his healing magic, and when the party goes into a dungeon, he just focuses on defending people, doesn't attack or heal anyone, since he already used all his heals for the less fortunate, and doesn't believe he should attack a kobold or goblin if he is the one invading their place of living. Honestly, that line, I'm like, okay, you're cooking.
That part I'm for. Yes.
Yeah, so far I'm not really hating this person.
Not healing your party.
Yeah, that's...
Well, we'll get into it.
Yeah.
60-40-ish right now.
Yeah. He will fight in defense of a town being sieged, but he won't fight while sieging others. This has caused a lot of problems for the party, but it's how my character believes he serves his god the best. What should I do? If it's a huge problem, maybe I'll discuss the DM killing him off for the party's sanity, but I'd like to hear from the community before doing something so drastic. So, there are a few comments that the OP left, but I think before I get into those, we'll just talk about, like, the initial post. Thoughts, feelings, opinions on this Paladin's problems.
Oh, I have immediate thoughts, but I'll go for it. Okay. So,
Go for
my
it.
immediate thoughts. I am very pro being someone who's like, hey, we're invading somebody else's space.
Mhm.
Like, let's see if we can resolve this some other way. I
Mhm.
usually end up, my characters unionize everyone all the time, which
Yeah.
is a great way to distract them from my party and instead distract them on also fighting whatever big bad is there, which is
Yes.
great. Um, so like I think there is a way to work with the party while also doing that.
Mhm.
Using all of your heals on NPCs and then not thank you. And then not being available to do that. If there is more than one person with heals, that might be
Yeah,
okay.
that'd be
But
fine.
you have to have that conversation at your
Mhm.
session 0. You have to
Yes.
say, like, this is a part of this character. Please do not be looking to me for heals. There have been tons of paladins and clerics who, like, don't do healing as a major thing. Not all
Mhm.
paladins and clerics, that's their focus.
Mhm.
I feel like there's a little bit of a lone wolfiness to this, though, where like
Yes.
you've constructed a character without thinking about why they're with this party and why the party is with them. And I think
Yeah.
that every time I've seen somebody who does that and who leans into, well, it's just what my character would do,
That's just
that
shitty.
might be true, but you're also a player playing with your friends.
You're
And
playing a game, yeah.
as yeah, and as that person, you should say, okay, but how can I like begin like maybe I begin to challenge that belief in myself and say, oh, well, maybe you say, oh, the party is clearly the less fortunate because they're so desperate for money that they're willing to like go on these adventures,
Mhm.
like, put themselves in these risky situations. Maybe that's how you persuade yourself. If you can't do that with your character, I think you should retire your character and make somebody who fits better with the party dynamic. It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
fair to make the whole party service your weird storyline.
Yeah, like without knowing like the full dynamic of the party in general, it just kind of sounds like this character's not meant for this group. Maybe have a different character in mind, but then also a small side tangent, always have a secondary healer. You have
Yeah.
your main healer,
Mhm.
and then you have your secondary just in case something happens. But even
Yeah.
outside of that, I do agree. The healing thing is fine. I can see myself playing a character like that, but also have an emergency pocket just for your party. You can waste like
Yes.
maybe a good quarter of your healing stuff for like NPCs and like the less fortunate, that's fine. But at the end of the day, your main priority is going to be your party, especially if that's how the dynamic is supposed to be. If it's going to be a party that's full of conflict and they are forced to be together and just they have to learn how to get along, I can see that being something that can be developed over time. But if you're already established, you don't want your party to end up stabbing you in the middle of the night. That just sucks. That just sucks.
And you'll be
Well,
all out of
and I mean,
heals. You won't be able to heal yourself.
yeah,
Exactly.
well, there's
Exactly.
definitely that. There's like there's a I think it's important to remember this is collaborative storytelling.
Mhm.
Mhm.
You are not the only storyteller. And so
Mhm.
if you aren't being a team player, you shouldn't play a team game. That
Yeah,
feels
that's
like
true.
such a very like Baldur's Gate on hard mode kind of personality. And like I think there are ways where that can be fun, but
Mhm.
it has to be fun for everybody. And I also
Yeah.
I'm going to shout out, I think this is kind of the DM's problem too. Like
Yeah.
the DM needs to stop putting NPCs that need to be healed in the way.
Yeah.
Like that feels to me like a place where the DM has some control and can kind of nudge away from that. Or you're playing God. talk to this guy and say, hey,
Yeah.
I have a reason for you to be healing this party. If
Yeah.
you want to serve me, that's what you do.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
like
true.
there
I
is a
could
very
just
clear way
imagine
you can solve this.
just having your god just call you down. It's like, hey, my dude, love your work. However, comma, you're making us look bad by doing this shit. Stop it.
Doing something weird.
And I mean, and
yeah.
maybe part of it too is maybe your party's a bunch of murder hobos and you
Yeah.
don't feel your character would
Mhm.
be in a group with that. That is a thing that you could pull the players aside and say, hey,
Yes.
I really love this character, but this murder hoboing is a little out of control. Can we pull back there so that
Mhm.
I feel better being here? I've had to do that multiple times. There have been situations where I'm like, I had a barbarian who I had to retire because I was like, oh, everyone else in the party wants to do diplomacy. This barbarian war
Yeah.
veteran would not sit in a wizard's tower for a month. That's just not going to happen. They have better
Yeah.
things to do. And so
Mhm.
I retired them and put somebody else in and then brought them back for the end. And like that,
Mhm.
that worked out okay. Like, I think there are so many ways to be a team player. That doesn't necessarily mean killing best character off. It
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean like maybe your paladin goes on a mission and
Yeah.
like you are a missionary and that character pops up as an NPC. Like maybe
Yeah.
that's the way. That there's so many ways forward where you can kind of have that be a shtick. But yeah, you do have to recognize when to let go of the bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
It's not the
too.
worst bit,
It's not
but
the
it
worst
is a
bit.
frustrating bit.
The thing too that I think there's a big difference between, because Kitty, you mentioned like maybe the DM should like not put so many NPCs that need healed, which I agree with. If that's what's happening, then that's like a very easy thing for the DM to be like, okay, I'm not going to put this in front of the. I also, part of me wonders if this is a situation where, because I have played with people like this before, where you get into like you're in the middle of combat, someone's down, and someone is like, hey, does anyone have heals? And the paladin's like, oh, off camera, off screen, I decided my character won't have any lay on hands because I would have helped anyone who I found in town. So, like, a part of me does wonder if that's even something that's happening in the game, or if that's something that they're just
Very much.
deciding that their character's
I mean,
done
I
already.
think there's an aspect here of like I remember I was playing this game and we had so many NPCs. We lived in a city, you know, and
Mhm.
so there were so many NPCs that were connected to our characters. But then they were constantly in peril because of the stuff
Yeah.
we were doing. And like not even that we were murder hoboing our way around the
Yes,
city,
which is the
but just
consequences
like
of the
us
story. Yeah.
trying to solve problems caused a
Mhm.
bunch of other problems. And it meant that we felt like we had to have all of the NPCs we cared about with us all the time in
Yeah.
order to like make sure that something didn't happen to them. And that really made the game get stagnant
Yes.
because like basically the DM punished us
Mhm.
if we let
Yeah.
anybody out of our sight. So we didn't. And
I
then we were
think
like, we're just gonna stay home, like
I
the
think
world's
Yeah.
dangerous.
another possible fix or something that could be done, and this happens in a couple games that I'm in, when it comes down to like you find like a traveling group of NPCs that are in dire need of help and whatnot. We can help them just fine. And you can say, oh, I offer some healing stuff. Sometimes the DM just like, yeah, you just heal them and then you take like a couple minutes or like a couple hours to
Yeah.
take a break and you still have your spell slots. I'm not gonna like
Yeah.
have you waste them on this one off thing. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
maybe just make them encounters where they're just one off things. Don't put spell slots into it, and
Yeah.
then you still have your healing stuff at the end of the day. So
Right.
Yeah.
you can still have that, but not put too much of the effort into it.
I think it really depends on if this is a situational issue, if this is a how this person's playing the character issue, or if this player doesn't really like their party.
Yeah.
Like
So on
which that might be it, you know? Like they might be like, you know what, fuck you guys. I'm not helping you. Like you
we don't
guys,
care about you.
you made your bed, now you lie in it.
So kind of along the lines of that, there is a comment thread that I wanted to highlight. Just it's very
Oh
funny to
boy.
me the way
Okay.
that this
All right.
person kind of goes lives their this character idea is very funny to me. So one of the comments in Reddit, someone asked, "Would your god be satisfied with you watching while your friends are being attacked and or dying on the battlefield while you do nothing? How is that a worthy virtue?" You know your character can be the lawful good moral compass of the party without being lawful stupid. The OP response is, I actively defend them and drag them out of harm's way when knocked unconscious. Which is so the concept of being in D&D combat and you're like, I use my action to drag this person out of the way. So
It happens.
then the person responds and says, so let's say you're the last one conscious. You're facing 3 kobold. What would your character do? OP responds, as soon as one person is unconscious, I grab them and yell to retreat. Never, never had multiple people knocked out at the same time by 3 kobolds. Seems like a Hail Mary imaginary scenario.
But the person literally just said, let's put a scenario in front of you, and you're the last one standing. Okay. It's now 70-30.
This person's being stubborn for the sake of it and isn't letting go of the bit. I also think, though, so this is a session 0 thing I think is really important, is to ask, do we want to have a serious campaign or a silly campaign?
Yeah.
Because I think that is maybe part of what's happening here. Like, there are some people who want to play a very moral campaign. Some people want to play a very morally gray campaign. Those people are going to struggle in a game together to have a good time. And so, like, by talking about those things, like, I mean, I can't imagine some of the characters I've played if we, like, went into a dungeon, say, to clear out the dungeon for a town, and one of our people gets knocked out, and I just pick them up and say, okay, we're retreating now. Like, that was, that's like so weak. Like, that you're not telling a story about being an adventurer. Now, in the real world, that is a very sensible thing to do. Yes, absolutely do that. But this is a fantasy game where you are striving to be a hero. And I think, like, making sure that everyone at the table has at least a similar idea of what is heroic, whether that be serving the crown, fighting the crown, destroying the crown, whatever those things are, like, you all have to be at least on the same bus. You don't have to be stopping at the same bus stop, but you have to be going in the same direction.
Yeah. Does that comment thread change your what's your percentage, Ava, now of how on
It's
the side
70,
of this
30. It's like a 70-30 of actually, you know what, actually no. It's a 30-70. Like, I still think this is a character I would play. I understand the struggle of this, but man, you need to just get your head out of your ass about this and just learn to work with people, please.
The concept
Or just
of
leave.
the concept of being in combat with kobolds and someone goes down and a character at the table just yelling retreat like is so fucking funny to me.
I think there is a world in which that is a really funny campaign moment.
Yes.
And everybody is laughing. Like, this is a bravely Sir Robin ran away situation, right?
Yes.
It could be really funny, but you have to look around at the rest of the party and be like, is this funny for you?
Yeah.
It's funny for me, but is it funny for you? Because if one person at the table isn't laughing, your joke's not landing, you know? And like, that sucks. And same with the DM. If the DM is sitting there like, are you serious? You stubbed your toe and now you're going to go home and have a long rest? Like, you know.
My toe is very precious to me.
My God doesn't want me to have a stubbed toe. Like, I mean.
My God's Aphrodite, she really cares about upkeep.
It could be really funny and fun, but you have to have everybody on the same page, both the DM and the rest of the players. Because at the end of the day, they're your friends.
Yeah,
You know?
hopefully. Maybe
Also,
not
just
after
knock 'em
this.
Maybe
knock
not
the
anymore.
kobolds unconscious. Just knock the kobolds unconscious. That way you're not killing them.
Yeah, that's true.
You are still helping your party by fighting with them. Just knock them unconscious. That rule applies in these games too.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You can always decide not to do a death kill,
Yeah.
or like a death blow. So like,
That's
just
how
do
I play
that. You
Baldur's
know.
Gate all the time.
I was
Just
gonna say,
get
every
that off.
time I'm fighting a weird little guy in Baldur's Gate, I'm like, I know these goblins are evil. I know in the game they're doing really bad stuff. I can't kill them. They're too good. They're too fun. I just am knocking them out.
They're my weird little guy.
Yeah. This is the game's fault that they're evil. It's not their fault that they're evil.
Yeah, exactly.
This
It's
is
all
the
about
developers.
I'm not
perspective.
going to kill the children because that is a learned behavior, and I'm
Yeah.
not participating in that.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Yeah. I just that whole concept of that character, that person seems like a very like. I don't think it's a bit for them. I don't think they're being funny. So I had to read that one.
Well, and I mean, and again, I could see like, oh, my character has experienced trauma.
Yeah.
And so
From
is
running away,
really
yeah.
deeply concerned about somebody dying. Maybe somebody died. And so now, like, somebody important to them died because they didn't do this.
Yeah.
There are ways to play this where it is super serious. And, like,
Yeah.
my question would be, are you allowing this character to grow?
Yeah.
Are they going to grow out of this? Or are they going to be this forever? Because
yeah.
you could kind of have that be a thing that you're going through in the first like 1 to 5 levels. But once you get past that, like, it's just not going to cut it anymore.
Yeah. Speaking of character growth, our next story is from RPG Horror Stories, which is one of my favorite subreddits. The title of this story is Player Wants to Feel Less Rewarded, and it turns into everyone's problem. So this is another story of a person, in my opinion, who is being pretty stubborn in a kind of strange, inexplicable way. So we'll call the protagonist of the story Gabriel. He was fine until session 15 of our game. For this campaign, we played on Discord. There were 5 players plus a DM. Sessions were only around 2 hours long because people were busy. So it's important for the context of the rest of the story that their sessions are only 2 hours long.
Yeah.
I don't remember the details, but we decide to split the party. 3 of us go to the sewers and encounter some ridiculous amount of giant rats. Gabriel and another party member decide to go to a bad guy's safe house and ambush him in there. As you can imagine, this isn't the easiest situation to handle for the DM, but the pace was pretty good. We have a hand-wavy sort of fight versus the rats, as we were way stronger than them and it was more of a plot thing than an actual encounter. The other 2 set some traps and eventually have a decently challenging battle for 2 people, defeat and interrogate the bad guy. Pretty cool so far. Session 15 ends, the DM gives us all the same amount of XP, and we level up. Yay! Everyone is happy, we talk about the session, we leave. Fast forward to next week. Gabriel sends a long message to the group chat saying he's not happy that he got XP for fighting the rats when he didn't fight the rats, and he doesn't want to get unfairly rewarded. There's like 20 different things that you could say to this, and we say all of it. He doesn't have to worry about doing a good job because it's a game. No one minds anyone getting undeserved XP. Punishing someone for doing something reasonable that happens to give less XP is bad game design. No one benefits from Gabriel being under-leveled compared to everyone else, etc. We talk in the group chat for like 2 hours. He's not convinced at all, and he says so. A few hours later, it's time for session 16, so I enter the voice call. The first thing I hear is Gabriel arguing about this exact thing, and the DM being super tired. This goes on for 20 to 30 minutes until we ask him to stop so we can play. We play, everything is okay, Gabriel doesn't push the issue, but the mood isn't great. Session 17 comes. The DM recaps what happened in the last session, like, you went here and fought X, and Gabriel annoyedly replies, yeah, everyone but me. He makes it very clear that he doesn't think he contributed anything to the fight, to everyone's surprise. So this is a separate fight from the rats. This is not still about the rats. He makes it clear that he doesn't think he contributed anything to the fight, to everyone's surprise, and starts arguing with everyone, until again, we see he's not listening and we ask him to stop. This becomes a bigger thing as time goes on. Every single session is preceded and followed by arguments about how he, contrary to popular belief, actually does nothing at all. Every time we have a somewhat straightforward fight, either because the fight is supposed to be easy or because we're lucky, we have to brace for yet another passive-aggressive comment. Or, if the fight is hard, we really can't win here, because if Gabriel obliterates all enemies, the fight was too easy, therefore he doesn't deserve XP. If he doesn't obliterate everyone, he was useless, therefore he doesn't deserve XP. At some point, the strange self-loathing had completely transitioned to getting mad at the DM for not making harder encounters for Gabriel to prove himself. I'm not sure what, if anything, happened behind the scenes. The campaign silently stopped. Months later, the DM invited... Yeah, months later, the DM invited me to another one without Gabriel, and no one mentioned anything. Kind of a bittersweet ending, because I'm not mad at him, but I think we were all dreading the sessions towards the end.
The entire time I was just like, just kick him out. Just kick this person out. I'm sorry, you just kick this person out. I think this is also a reason why maybe milestone leveling up is a thing. Like, not exactly for this reason, but I can understand why people do milestone experience now.
Yeah, because I mean, my thought is like, well, hang on, like, you went and did these trap settings and you fought this bad guy, like, isn't that enough? Like, you did do something. You just did something different. Yeah, like, I mean, you're not arguing that the rat killers shouldn't get points. You're, what? I'm so confused. I mean, okay, so there is the actual situation, right? But I think there's also, do you like this person? Is this person this person someone that you are socially connected to? Do you have an investment in this person? Because if you do, then I think the DM can think like, okay, well, maybe I curse you then. Will that make you feel like you've gotten something to like counterbalance that? Like, sure, like that could be a side quest.
Yeah.
That could be a little bump in the road for him.
I know that you meant the DM curses the character, but because you prefaced it with like, is this someone you like?
You, dude.
It's like, you can just curse them.
Yeah, I mean,
just
and
they don't come
draw
to
some
anymore.
sigils on the floor, and I mean, I just think like if this really matters to this person in some way, and you are tired of arguing about it, I mean, first of all, I think the DM can always say, "I'm the DM. That's what I've decided."
Yeah,
that should be the end of it. If you don't like that, then don't play the game with that DM. Like, no D&D is better than bad D&D. I'm a firm believer in that. I think there's a point where it's no longer about the situation. It's a point about Gabriel, where you say, okay, Gabriel, you have now hijacked our hangout time with with your therapy needs long enough. You got twice that we were willing to do that, and now we're done. If you cannot be done, then you will be booted. And I like that, because rather than it being something where it's like he's just booted and there's no explanation, there is a warning. There is like a red flag. There is, this is the specific behavior. This is how it is impacting other people. This is the result we want to see. And these are the consequences if you don't do it. It's like you have to be really spelled out. I always joke that like children, dogs, and men, they all train the same. Which is maybe unfair. It comes from having been a dominatrix at a point in my life. But like there is something to this idea that like, yeah, people need really clear, consistent like situations, like boundaries that are really spelled out. And sometimes other people feel like, well, isn't it obvious? Not for everyone.
Yeah,
there's a lot of neurodivergent people who are into tabletop RPGs. I know this will be a surprise to everybody, but
I mean, there was like that conversation that happened a little bit ago about why video games will have that yellow banner thing when it's like interact with this thing. It's because people don't know to interact with that thing, even though many people
Yeah.
are like, oh, of course this is obvious. It's not obvious for everyone. It's not
Yeah.
obvious for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And like, so it might seem passive aggressive to one person, but to Gabriel, maybe it felt like, no, you guys aren't taking this seriously. And this is really
Yeah, yeah.
important to me. You know, like, I don't agree with Gabriel. I feel like Gabriel is taking up a lot of oxygen in the room, but
Yeah.
Gabriel might not have been aware that that's what they were doing. And like, I would give an opportunity of like, we have heard you, we have made a decision.
Yeah.
If you want to continue to play with us, we would enjoy that, but this is what that's going to look like. We are not going to do this anymore. And then don't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're playing on Discord, you can mute him. Like, you know, like there are ways that you have control of this situation. So if he's not following the rules that you have laid out clearly, you can enforce them.
Yeah.
Like a
That's
ball
true.
gag, but on the internet.
God, I'm just imagining what that looks like. And he just types in chat, okay, I'm done now. Are you sure? Are you sure you're done? Yeah, I'm good. Okay, we'll undeafen you now. We'll undeafen you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gabriel, just join a milestone game. Just join a milestone game. Good luck, homie. Good luck.
Yeah, or play video games.
Play video games. Play TTRPG.
I played a character that I specifically, and I talked, I mean, here's the thing. I talked to everybody beforehand, said, this is what I'd like to do. Is this okay? But like, I wanted to play a sad dad bard who wasn't an adventurer the way that everybody else was. And so, I mean, really, he should have been like level 2, maybe. But because everybody else was like level 16, I was like, well, we'll have him be level 14. But he doesn't really understand how his bard powers work. And that's how we'll play it. So, like, he has access to all of this cool stuff, but he's really confused in a sort of almost wild magic kind of way that this is something that not everybody can do, or like that he can do. Like, I think there's a way to play that where you do need to be protected by the party, or like you are at a disadvantage. But again, you have to make sure that everybody else is cool with that.
Yeah.
And that is a clear conversation to have. And you have to give people an opt-out. I don't think it's fair to hold people hostage for 2 hours because you're having an argument about what you think. That is a conversation between you and your DM. Nobody else needs to be there for that.
Yeah.
And when your DM says, I have ruled, it is done, that's it.
You either suck it up or leave.
Yeah, like, you know, and like, it's not fair to not let the DM opt out and say, I don't want to talk about this anymore.
The idea of being stuck in a Discord call waiting to play D&D for 20 minutes while someone is arguing is my personal hell. That sounds so... Because I've had, like, relationships in my life before where I've known people who will, like, corner you and argue with you for 20 minutes or longer, and there's no way to get out of it. Horrible. It's a horrible experience.
It's being at a party where someone is standing between you and the door.
Right.
And like, this is an online version of that, where it's like, I cannot escape without getting through you.
Right.
I don't think people are always aware when they do that, you know, like, because they're very impassioned. So I'm maybe I'm giving Gabriel a little too much compassion here. Very possible. But like, I can see where that happens. I mean, I'm in one D&D game with a bunch of people who love to have a 20 to 40 minute conversation about the politics of Wizard of the Coast or general politics or whatever. And like, they love to bicker and talk. I don't generally like to be involved in that. So we've scheduled our game to start a half an hour later. So it's like, people can meet up at 4, but at 4:30 is when we start to play. And 4:40 is a hard start, you know? And so that way I know if I just don't have the space for it, I don't have to listen to it, you know? Like, I think that
Yeah.
there's a way to even have that.
Yeah. I do like the idea of being like, all right, Gabriel, you get on the call 20 minutes early.
And no one else will be there.
Rant
No
into
one
the
else will
void.
be there.
Just rant into the void. It's okay, honey.
You can talk about how you don't deserve this reward.
I
And
mean,
then 20 minutes
to
later,
me,
we'll get off.
there is a part of me, honestly, that says, oh, this guy sounds like he's having a hard time. And like,
Yeah.
that's not anybody else's responsibility. Like, don't get me wrong. I don't
Yeah.
think that anybody owes him sitting and holding space for that. But like, if this is somebody who is your friend and you have an investment in him,
Mhm.
ask him if he's having a hard time. Like, ask him, is it really about D&D?
Yeah.
You
Or
know,
is it
like,
something else?
because a lot of people play D&D as a form of therapy to work out some shit.
Kitty, you said
And
that. You said that, and like one of the initial thoughts I had is like, oh no, is there something wrong with like with the missus at home? I don't know if your marital status is anything, but is there something wrong here?
yeah, like, I mean,
Yeah.
shit. Did you just find out you have cancer, but you don't feel like you know these people well enough to like,
Yeah.
especially with men, where they're not encouraged to talk about their feelings. This is
Mhm.
where that shit comes out. It's not okay, but it's
not.
understandable.
It's leaking
know,
into
and, like-
the XP.
Your sympathy
Yeah.
is very appreciated because I am also someone like that. But the cards did tell me, as like my New Year's tarot card reading was like, stop being nice to people. So this is me obeying the cards, being like, don't be nice to these people, especially if you're doing shit like this.
I live the fool, right? I am constantly, and I will never stop. I am walking off a pillar into the void and going, I'm sure I'll be fine. And you know what? Sometimes
Bless.
I regret that, but
you
also the way I try to think of it is I'm the fool, but I'm stepping off the tower. So it's
Ooh.
like, yeah, I'm walking off of this, but also this is crumbling. So it's smart for me to do this. It doesn't seem smart to everyone else, but it is. Yeah.
Kitty, you provided just too perfect of a transition to one of these other stories. It's
I
actually
swear
a
I
different
haven't been
one.
reading the Reddits.
It's gross, finding all the exact same ones. This is the only one I think that I have a specific content note for. This is from r/D&D, and it does have a mention of deadly injuries because a player character dies in this story, but it's not super in depth. But if for anyone watching, I know I already talked about this with the people on the stream, but if anyone watching, if that's not your thing, zone out for, mute the tab or whatever for a little bit, because this is what the story is about. So, Kitty, having mentioned you're constantly stepping off of a cliff into the void, this is, maybe you'll resonate with this person. This story is entitled, "One of my players got mad that his character died in a super stupid way. Need help with this." One of my...
Oh no, is it me? Did my DM send this? This has happened to me before.
We'll see. I don't think it's you. The way the person reacts to this, it doesn't sound like how you would react, but maybe this is a slightly different person.
This is a call out.
This is a call out for you. I've been running my first campaign of D&D with a group of friends. It's been fun, but last session something, in parentheses, really funny happened, and I wanted to know what y'all think of this. So, to give context, the party was on their very first dungeon, and one of the traps went off. It's a giant hammer that falls from the ceiling, breaking the floor, leaving a hole that seemingly has no end. I tell them they can barely see inside it. It's pitch black. The wizard drops a stone to see if there's a floor somewhere down there. After about 5 seconds of silence, they hear the stone cracking on the bottom. The fall is roughly 40 feet. Also, later in the comments, someone more science-minded is like, if it's 5 seconds of silence, it would actually be like 400 feet. So
yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
I mean, I was
yeah,
gonna disagree with that.
I'm not gonna be that nerd. I'm glad somebody was.
I know I don't know math. I would have agreed with, 40 sounds fine.
45 seconds. Regardless, 5 seconds of silence, I think a person would be like, this is a deep
right,
hole.
yeah.
I tell them this, expecting them to find a way down, but here's when our main character comes into play. His name is Olcard. He's an old man, a necromancer, edgy and silent. I want to drop down the hole and use my dagger to stab the wall right before falling. That way I can go down quick. I asked him if he was sure about this stunt. Just watch, he said as he rolled a 1 on his dexterity check and took all of his HP down with fall damage dice. The whole table was crying, laughing.
He should not be upset. He should not be upset. He should not be upset. He did that to himself. Consequences.
Yeah.
Consequences. Okay, continue.
The whole table was crying, laughing as this hooded, tall, old man dropped down a pit and broke his neck in an instant. Needless to say, the Necromancer was not only embarrassed but pissed off. He started complaining that this isn't how my character is supposed to die. That made no sense. And every attempt at explaining was futile, so he just stayed mad the whole night. This is the part that I think is the wildest part of all of this. Now I've got this player who refused to accept his character is dead and won't make another one. Should I let him proceed with his neck broken, multiple fractures Necromancer, or stay my ground and tell him to make a new character?
Tell him to piss off. No. There are...
Well...
So this is not a campaign that I was in, but a friend of mine told me about it. But essentially, like, she had someone who was playing a bard who was relatively new to the area, who was killed by an ogre, that the party told him, hey, don't fuck with this ogre. He's bad news. We're supposed to try to get ready to fight this guy. And he was like, no, I could totally convince him not to do the bad thing. And then he got Bane snapped in half. And his wife was like, how could you murder him this way? He wasn't supposed to die this way. It's like, lady, he was warned.
Yeah.
He was warned apparently a couple times. He did. That's just on him. I'm sorry. Just let it go. Let it go. Please let it go.
Kitty, is this about one of your characters? After having
It is not about me. No. Okay, the reason I said, like, oh shit, this could be me. I had on my birthday, I had a character die. I was genuinely kind of pissed about it, even though I recognized it was not the fault of the DM or the party. It was some bad dice rolls and a weird situation. There was also some issues where I misunderstood like what holding your turn meant, because like a lot of podcasts I listen to, they're sort of wishy-washy on some of the rules. And when you hold your turn, you can do an action and a bonus action and a movement. You can't actually do that.
Right.
Which I didn't know. And so the whole situation could have been avoided had I been given that information. But my character, who was fairly conflict averse, was like, well, I'm going to sneak around and go in through the window and see if I can find out what's happening in this locked room, while the rest of the party is like fighting all of these things that I'm just not very good at. And I happened to get into the room where a doppelganger was, who like pretty much instantly murdered me. And I was like, it's my birthday! How could you do this to me on my birthday? And I was genuinely pretty upset because I really liked this character, and I felt like this was just really bad luck, and there should have been some way for me to not have it completely end. Like, I felt like, come on, DM, you could have made this a little bit like maybe there's a noise that happens that alerts the party or whatever. Like he didn't give me any leeway. And I
on your birthday,
I pouted. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not good at hiding when I'm upset, and so like it was pretty clear. But I did DM. I DM'd the DM afterwards and was like, hey, I'm sorry that I'm a bit pouty. I'm genuinely kind of upset. I feel like this was just really bad luck. I understand why you ruled what you ruled. I understand why this happened. it just kind of sucks, and I'm kind of upset about it. And also, did I remind you that it's my birthday?
There are special rules when it's your birthday.
I know. And so he was like, look, we can figure out a way for this character to get resurrected. Like, she was like a gang mafia daughter or something. And so I was like, we can find a way to resurrect her. Maybe she comes back in a few sessions or whatever. And I ended up saying, you know what? I thought about it. I think it's a good idea for me to play a character that fits more with the vibe of the rest of the party.
Mm-hmm.
And so that next character will be an Oath of Vengeance Paladin who will come in and avenge her death.
Yeah. That's
And
cool.
her body will get sent to her mom, who will resurrect her and then put her basically in like a grounding situation for a while for being so stupid. And like, we were able to work it out. I'm glad that we talked about it. I'm so glad that my DM was like, hey, I'm going to hold space for you being upset. You know, like, it sucks when you lose a character. It sucks when the dice tell a story that you did not want to tell. When you feel like, I really could make this happen and it would be really cool. And then it's like, no, that sucks. It does suck. And like, I do feel for this guy. There is a part of me that's like, I could see it being really funny to be like, okay, they kind of bring you back, but you're not quite the same. And like, you roll a six-sided die and a part of your body falls off.
Yeah.
Every once in a while. You know, like,
consequences.
I could see there being some fun opportunities for consequences that lead this person to be like, you know what? Yeah, it's probably time to let this guy go.
Yeah.
You know, it's time to shoot old Yeller. Like,
Taylor, as soon as you described this old man as edgy, I knew it was going to be bad. But like, similar to Kitty, I had a character die in a Pathway game, and it's the Reign of Winter campaign. She was killed by a summoned rhino in the middle of a winter landscape by a witch. And I did not blame my GM. I didn't blame the characters. I didn't blame for the fact that I was the solo healer. I blamed the writer of this campaign. Hey, writer of the Reign of Winter campaign, you did not balance this properly. How dare you? I will come for your wife and kids. I'm fighting you. Anyway,
my stream.
On your stream, I'm calling that guy out.
Banned.
But as much as I pouted, as much as I was upset, I ended up going into it with my GM again. It's like, hey, I'm upset right now. It's not you. It's just the Reign of Winter campaign, and I'm gonna just be petty to that one man forever. And I'm just gonna make my character's sister, because I already wrote in the backstory that she has like 15 siblings, and it's just gonna be a rotating cast of siblings. Every time one dies, I'll just bring another one out of pettiness, and they all look similar to the first lady, so I'll just use her art, and that's just a pettiness to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, like, I used that as a springboard to create a character that was as opposite of that character as possible, but who was like a cousin and who was like, couldn't you just be more like this Earth Genasi Paladin instead of the flighty Air Genasi wild magic sorcerer that you are, who doesn't go to school and doesn't pay attention? Couldn't you be this grounded, stable person? And so, like, that was fun. I like that character continues to live elsewhere. If I ever wanted to visit her again, I can. But it's also been kind of fun to like play this new character. And there have been situations where that character hasn't meshed really well with the party yet. Where like the party is used to just like, oh, kill whoever when you can. But you know, they killed the person who killed my character's cousin, and she was an Oath of Vengeance Paladin. She was pissed about that. It was like, how fucking dare you? You took my kill. You know, and so it's like, it's interesting to like play conflict in a game, and I've had to keep checking in with some of the people, the other players I have conflict with, and be like, I'm role playing this conflict. I'm worried it might sound real to you. I feel like this is a conflict that will happen between my character and yours. Here's some ways I could see out of it. What do you think? You know, and so like we were able to have that role play, have that frustration, but also as players, be like, this is a story that we're telling. How can we like move beyond this? I mean, there is a part of me that's like in a funny campaign playing a necromancer who has died and is like barely holding it together is really funny.
Yeah.
But I don't think this person sounds like they would have done that as a bit, you know? It sounds like they wanted there to be no consequences for this. And
yeah,
I mean, I guess that there's a few questions I have. Like, is that like did that fall damage really wipe out all of their hit points and then enough to kill them permanently forever?
I think it might be because it sounds like this is their first dungeon, so that they might.
So they were pretty low
They might be
level.
So they probably have like 8 hit points.
It's a low level, and it was a nat 1.
feet.
Yeah.
Then that might be enough to just completely kill them.
Well, if it was 400 feet, yes.
The
If it
DM
was
said
40 feet, I'm a little bit suspicious of that. I think that the DM could have fudged it a little to have that person resurrected, maybe, as a way to like create a little bit of wiggle room.
Or like leave it at like a 1
man bones.
Or like leave it as like a 1 HP and then leave it as like a puzzle for the party to figure out how to descend the
get
pit,
down there,
get the person back, and then heal them. And if you don't do it within the allotted time, then they die, type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and again, it depends on how much you like this person. If you like
I don't like
this person, then, and I think that is entirely how do they toss the ball to other people on their team?
Yeah.
If they are going off and doing reckless shit by themselves all the time, let them die.
Let them die. As someone who tends to be healer, if they do dumb shit, I'm not helping you.
Oh no. I think out of the three of us, I think neither of you two GM at all or very often. Is that correct?
Yeah. Once, and no one will ever see record of that. And my partner's in the chat right now. Don't talk about it.
I only ask because I think I have a chip on my shoulder against this person for one specific reason that I feel like is more because I GM a lot. I don't know if I mostly GM, but I GM a lot. And the one thing that they do, which is my pet peeve as a GM, is if someone just rolls the dice and is like, I'm doing this, and rolls the dice. To me, that's a pet peeve because, first of all, they might not even be rolling something that is a thing to be rolled. You know, like in some situations someone might just be like, oh, I'm gonna roll insight or whatever, and they don't know that there's something going on, that like maybe not a good roll for them to make, maybe there's nothing they can get on that roll. I really firmly GM with the idea that you shouldn't ever roll dice if there's no outcome, positive or negative. Like there has to be a reason to be rolling them. So for this player to say, oh yeah, watch this, and just immediately roll the dice, I'm like, okay, you are gonna die, because if you would have waited for me to tell you what to roll or what to do, I would have given you ample notice, like, hey, you want to stab a dagger into a rock wall 40 or 400 feet down.
Especially when you're an old man. Can you imagine?
Old man,
man.
But also,
the stakes. Yeah.
I don't know if it was clarified in the story, but was there even a reason to get into the pit? It just seems like the trap set off and a whole a pit was made. Why would you want to go down there?
I think it doesn't specifically say. The GM says that they expected them to find a way down, so maybe there was a reason to go down there. But like if I'm GMing in this scenario and someone says, I want to jump down the hole, stab my dagger into the wall, I would say, here's what your character would know as the outcome. You can try to do that. If you fail this roll, your character will die. Like, that's the type of GM I am. Where it's like, if you want to do this, and these are the stakes. But the fact that this person just was like, I'm doing this, rolls the dice, I'm like, okay, you're dead now.
Well, also, I think that the reason why you say, there's a little bit of metagaming when someone's like, I'm going to roll for insight, I'm going to roll for dexterity. Like, your character doesn't have that knowledge.
Yeah.
Your character is doing actions. Your character is not rolling dice.
Yeah.
while I think if this guy was like, oh, I'm going to stab my blade into this rock and like use it to like skate down, like if you waited for the DM to say, okay, well, in order to stab your blade into the rock, I'm going to need you to roll a strength check.
Right.
The DC is this. You know, like the DC is 25. Good
And you
fucking
die.
luck, dude.
You
Like,
die if you fail.
There's
to
gonna be
use
several
soul
checks
vision.
involved
just
with
to
that.
stab the knife into the rock. You aren't even in the pit yet. Just to do that.
Just
You know,
Stabbing,
like
stabbing
there are
into
ways
the-
there are
stabbing
ways
into
to
the
break
wall.
up that action, but you
Yeah.
as the player have to let the GM be like, let me help
Yeah,
you. It
this
could
is
be a
what's doing it, this is
dexterity
what's happening.
thing. Maybe you can't get your knife in the wall, but maybe you manage to slide down the edge in some way. You know, like,
Yeah.
but you got to let the GM help you.
Also,
And if you're not going to do that, then your GM's going to be like, all right, fuck
You're
you.
dead.
You fucked around, you found out.
You're
Like,
dead now. Also,
just
why
make a
are you a
survival check.
necromancer? Like, why are you a
Doing
necromancer?
rogue shit.
Yeah, presumably a wizard, I would think. Using
how did you
dexterity
get so
at all.
old? How did you get to be so old doing this stuff?
He wants to relive his youth, okay?
I mean,
His rogue
I could see it
youth.
being really funny if, like, the reason he's a necromancer is because he keeps having to bring himself back to life. I
Yes,
feel like
yeah,
Brendan
yeah.
Lee Mulligan played a character similar to that, where it's just like electrocuting himself constantly to like bring himself back.
Yeah.
I could see that being a really funny character,
Yeah.
but like you can't get mad when
I don't
that
think
sort
this
of thing
person has-
happens.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't think this person has a sense of humor. Because this is
No.
objectively funny. This is pretty
It is
objectively
Horribly
Yeah.
hilarious.
So okay, so that's that. Oh, I do have a couple of comments I'll read and then we'll go to our a quick break. But some of the comments are very funny. One of the comments mentions the drill tweet that goes, "So long, suckers! I rev up my motorcycle and create a huge cloud of smoke. When the cloud dissipates, I'm lying completely dead on the pavement," which is good. Drill, love drill.
so accurate.
So accurate to what happened.
Oh, Drill.
Another comment says, "Never trust a chef who isn't fat. Never trust a necromancer who isn't dead."
See, that's my vibe. I feel like there is a way to play this character as a dead person. That would be
Yeah.
very funny.
I think so. So yeah, we are going to take a quick break, like 5 minutes. And stick around though if you're in chat because some of the stories we have coming up are great. A little sneak peek. Our next story we're going to read when we come back from the break is going to be a submission from a viewer, so I'm excited about that. That is not about conflict. It's just a story from their table, which is really funny. And then we've also got some trouble with watching TikToks at the table is one of the stories we're going to read. And then another story of a DM. I just titled this one DM Needs to Chew. So those are some of the things that we have.
Interesting.
Yeah, to look
I'm
forward
intrigued.
to. Yeah.
I'm scared. I'm scared of that one.
So we'll see how that goes. I'm going to my break screen. So yeah, we'll be back in like 5 minutes. And we'll be back with some of those stories. So we'll see you all in a little bit.
Yay.
Bye.
Bye.
Felicitations, everyone. We are back with our second half of Over the Table. And we have had some stories about, I would say, some pretty stubborn players so far. We'll get back into that. But before we do that, first of all, I meant to do this before we went to break, but Nocturnal Nox and Chelsea Hay, thank you so much for the follows. Appreciate you being in here. I was going to do that before the break, and I left a note for myself to call followers before the break, and then still didn't do it. So our next story that we're going to read is actually a viewer submission. And if you are like, oh, hey, that sounds like a fun thing to do, you can submit your stories for Over the Table. You can email me. So if you have something that you want to include, like screenshots or something like that, you can email rollforfelicity@gmail.com with the subject line Over the Table. Or I also have a form that you can fill out. If you're on Tumblr, you can send me an ask. And it does not have to be stories where you're like, hey, this horrible thing happened. It can be just a fun story from your table, which is what I'm about to read. This story is from Jamie, who uses she, they pronouns, who says, I was playing in a 3.5 game with a group of friends that had been going for over 4 years. The big crisis of the game revolved around our world having been taken out of alignment from the elemental and divine planes to stop an otherworldly invasion, ending the use of all kinds of magic several hundred years ago, and now something or someone was causing it to slip back into alignment with other planes, often leading to chaos at best. We had tracked down the culprits, a group of artificers from a cult dedicated to restoring the world, and we were confronting them in the heart of their planar engine while they were attempting to reconnect to the elemental plane of fire. We had an NPC with us who could shut down the machine safely once we dealt with the operators, but the plane was already merging with ours, and fire elementals and other it says features, but I think it means creatures. Creatures were spawning around the battlefield attacking indiscriminately. The DM rolled for a target for one of those elementals. He targeted the NPC, who knows how to shut down the engine. The DM rolled a natural 20 and blasted her into ash. We desperately fought the controls, but everyone who knew how to operate it had been roasted. The closest thing we had to an answer was our sorcerer, who decided to try an arcana check to see if she could find a way to stop the merge. She rolled a nat 1. Huh, the DM said. Well, roll to see how bad this is. Another nat 1. Huh, the DM said in the exact same tone. Well, Can you guys give me like 5 minutes? He walked out onto the balcony of my apartment. He paced back and forth. He called the friend he'd originally wrote a big chunk of his campaign with. I'm pretty sure I saw him stop a minute to scream at an uncaring universe. Guys, he finally said once he came in, I'm gonna need some time to think about this. It's been 6 years since that night. He's still thinking about it. I'm pretty sure our characters, that world, and everyone else in it pretty much got divided by 0. But if my old DM ever figures out what to do about it, I'm up for taking a shot.
That is so funny, mainly because like my main campaign that I'm in right now that's been going on for like 6 years. God, it's been so long. We're kind of going through something similar. We're now at the point where it's like, what do we do with all these magical items and how do we handle the world right now? Do we give it back to the old ways, the new ways, or something in between? Man, this sucks. Why do we have to make this choice?
This feels like a situation where the DM fucked around and found out. Like,
yeah,
if the DM, like, why would you put the only person in the room who could figure, like, why would you even do that?
Yeah.
Why? That
you also could have just said, you didn't even have to say this fire elemental targeted the NPC. You could have just targeted towards the characters instead, or like maybe
just
lessen the damage.
Lie. That's what lying's for. That's
it's
why
okay
you have a
to fudge it sometimes. It's okay to fudge it sometimes. The Macaroons do it all the time with their podcast.
That's true.
I think NetPod does. Everybody does. Because, like, the thing is, at the end of the day, the dice are a tool for telling the story. The story is what's important.
Yeah.
And if the dice are like, you know what, fuck your story, then you have to say, actually, dice, let me tell you that you are a tool here. You are not the story. Yeah. You know?
I definitely agree with that. I think there is a part of me that goes, this whips so hard, though. This is such a good, and it's obviously a bad ending to the campaign in the sense that the whole world probably ended. But that is rad. I'm sorry, but that is rad.
This is also one of the reasons.
They should have an epilogue.
Yeah.
They should get an epilogue.
Yeah.
I agree
this
with
is
that.
Also a reason why I cannot be a storyteller, because my ass would have had plans A through M prepared. For whatever reason this NPC can't do what they need to do, have backups. If you have not thought of a backup, that's just proper, and that's not proper planning. And my anxious ass would not be able to handle that at all.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would say I would not have done as a DM in this scenario, having already said that I think this absolutely whips. It's memorable. Obviously, it's very memorable. This person is like, this was great. Like, obviously, this was unexpected, but this is very
It's
memorable for
very
me.
funny. It's
Yeah.
very, very funny.
I don't do fumbles for nat ones, if they're skill checks. So if I was GMing this and somebody rolled a nat one on an Arcana check, obviously they're not going to succeed. Something bad's going to happen. But I don't think I would be like, whatever you do in response to that nat one, the world is ending or something really, really bad is happening. So that's me. I'm not as harsh with nat ones as some people are. But that being said, I think that's this is a rad story.
At the end of the day, if everybody at the table is like, yeah, cool, then
Yeah.
fine. Honestly, whatever. Like, then as long as everyone's having a good time, if they want it to be vague and that's the ending, I think I personally would like there to be an epilogue.
Yes,
right?
I think an epilogue would be good.
An epilogue
And
would be
maybe
nice.
that's where you start your next campaign, is like, okay, this is the campaign after the campaign, right? Like, so this is how everybody deals with that. That would be really cool and really interesting. But like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like this is why they say don't make something a roll if you can't have it succeed 100%, or you can't have it fail 100%.
Yeah,
then it shouldn't be a roll. If it's that tentative, then you got to figure out another way around it, you know?
I agree with that. Yeah, if the DM,
but I mean, it's easy for me to say I don't DM, so like whatever. If I was the DM in this situation, I absolutely would have gone onto the balcony and just been like, ah! And then, but I would have tried to figure out something and be like, okay, here's a couple of options. What do you guys think? Like, are you cool with this being the end? Do you want to have an epilogue? Do you want to try to save it?
Do you want to like have a post-apocalyptic, like, hey, we know how those characters ended? This is the apocalypse.
What a great way to transition to Mork Borg. You know what I mean? Like, that is perfect. You know? And maybe you Mork Borg it for a while, and then you come back to these characters. Maybe it's a dream. I don't know.
If it's an apocalypse scenario, you could really reset to any game. Like, you could have this happen, and then it's like, okay, we're playing Wanderhome now, and it's the same world.
Yeah, absolutely.
But everything got so fucked that you're animal. Like, everyone's animals now.
What's the name of the person who submitted this?
Jamie submitted it.
Jamie, I hope that you're able to listen and just know, take these suggestions to your DM and let us know what happens. I hope you get that apocalyptic game or some type of closure.
I want to follow up.
Please follow up. Let us know. And to that DM, hey, what have you been doing for 6 years?
Thinking.
Are you in therapy now or something?
I think that DM just sort of went, if I just go very slowly, they won't notice me.
into the bushes, the Simpsons gif.
That's also when you find out your DM's address and you just start threatening them in person. It's like, hey, what happened?
Jamie,
what happened?
I don't recommend you do that. I have to.
All my main campaigns, I know where those motherfuckers live, so I will fight on command.
If nothing else, Jamie, this story you wrote it very well. Your timing is great. And maybe you should DM. Jamie, maybe you should do the post-apocalyptic scenario. Also, this is eerily similar to the plot of my home game of D&D. Like, not the ending where everything explodes, but the, like, planes being, like, slightly shifted and needing to be... That's, like, almost exactly what my home... Yeah, that's almost exactly what my home game campaign is. So, hopefully... that doesn't bode poorly for my players. Hopefully the Jamie isn't somehow me from the future or one of my players from the future.
Well, now you have some time to think about it and be that's not going to happen. Like,
I'm not going to happen.
The DM for my private campaign, like my private game is like, yeah, I can't really plan much until you guys tell me what you're planning on doing. It's like, don't put that pressure on me.
Relatable. Okay, our next story comes from the subreddit r/D&D. And this is a very just like interpersonal conflicty one. The fact that it's a tabletop RPG is almost, I guess it's important to the story, but it's more like kind of tangential. So the title to this one is Player Would Rather Scroll TikTok Than Be Engaged. I'm a first-time DM, but I've been playing D&D since 2008. I'm looking for advice on how to keep players engaged. I have 3 players who are amazing, 1 who is great but sometimes burns out early, and 2 that are constantly on their phones and distracting other players with TikToks and memes. I would love to ban tech at the table, but some of my players are very new and rely heavily on D&D Beyond. Also, I use a lot of tech to prep for sessions, and having my laptop as backup if my group refuses to follow the plot is handy. We started this campaign with a different DM who washed their hands after a few sessions because of the lack of engagement. I'm close friends with all my players, and I don't want to kick anybody out, but after building half a session around one of their backstories, warning them ahead of time, and still getting 0 engagement, I'm not sure what else I can do. I want to see this campaign through to the end. I gave up one of my favorite player characters to take over running this, but if part of stopping the big bad requires this character to talk to the rest of the party, it looks like I may wind up blowing up the material plane, and I really don't want that. I'd much prefer my ragtag adventures be successful. Please help. Relatable. I think this is a relatable story for a lot of DMs, of having a group of people who want to play D&D in theory, but then at the table are maybe not super engaged or able to pay attention.
I relate to the person looking at TikTok.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I understand that as well.
My harsh solution to this:
Oh no.
actions have consequences. If you're not going to pay attention, consequences for not paying attention. But as someone who does like to have, like, maybe I'll play like a little bit of Sudoku, or I'm just chatting with
Yes.
people, or just like looking at Twitter, that's fine. But you also have to make sure to manage your attention span properly. And if you're not giving your all, then you don't. Consequences, man. I had a player be kind of kicked out because of a game because of this, so it kind of it stresses me out on a level because I don't want that to happen.
Right. Yeah.
This person doesn't want that to happen. But if
I
you already
think-
lost one DM for this.
Yeah.
Well,
that's a
so
lot.
okay, as somebody who has ADHD and who like has a really hard time staying still for as long as these games tend to
Yes.
go,
Mhm.
and like combat, I cannot pay attention in combat. I just can't.
Mhm.
It is
Yeah.
so long and so boring, and if it is not impacting me, I don't care, you know, like, and that's part of just how D&D does combat, is just very war game-esque, and that is boring. Some ways around that, having a visual, if you can have some way to have a map and have characters moving around, just that physicality is helpful. I know when I was playing more in-person games, I crochet. Crocheting is quiet. It isn't distracting to other people. I can be doing something with my hands and paying attention. Like, I actually need to do something with my hands if my brain is going to take in information. Like, I'm somebody who is doing work and listening to music and something else is happening at all times. Like, I just need overstimulation in order to hyper focus. So I need the table to be okay with that. Like, I have to be able to do something. On the other hand, it is important to not have that something be noisy, to not be something that takes other people's focus away. You know, it is kind of a joke at some of the tables that I'm at where I'm like, I'm really sorry. My notes, I try to take notes. They don't make a lot of sense to me. Sometimes I'm like, I didn't hear this guy's name, like Nazra or whatever, and so he's just Nene. And like, that's who he is now. That's the only name he's gonna have. Like, and like, there's ways that we've made that fun and playful at the table, but I've also like said to the other team, like the rest of the team, hey, I'm really bad at taking notes. Like, if there is somebody who can help with that, like, I can help, maybe I bring food to the table so
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm taking on something else. I am doing something to contribute when some of these things are just harder for me to do. The other thing that works really well for, at least for online games, I don't know if it would work as well for in-person games, taking notes using GIFs. Like,
Oh, yeah.
we have a specific thread on our discords for memes that have to do
Mhm.
with the game, and
Yeah.
by finding gifs that relate to key moments in the game, I that is a better way for me to take notes because that gif reminds me of what happened. And
Yeah,
so it
yeah.
is a funny and silly thing, but it's also a shorthand that really, really works for me and ends up being like a fun resource where we're like, oh, that's what happened. There's, this image of the rodents of unusual size. That's because we were in the sewers and we ran into these giant rats, like, so it's like, I think that there's
Mhm.
ways you can have both.
Yeah, I think also it helps to take breaks intermediately, just 5 to 10 minutes every so often, just to make sure that the players who easily get distracted have a moment to take themselves out of it,
Yep.
do what they
And
need to
walk
do,
around.
walk around, talk about their TikToks and whatnot as someone who loves watching TikToks,
Yeah.
do all that stuff and then come back and refocus on that. That's perfectly fine. And also, I don't know if they said that they've had conversations with these players yet or if they're working on it.
I
Cause
don't think it's unclear at the very least. They don't mention that they have had conversations. It says
I
the other
feel
DM dropped out, so like I
yeah,
could imagine that maybe a conversation was had at that point, but it's who knows.
it's important to at least bring it up, being like, hey, I'm trying my
Yeah.
best to fill in this role because we all want to play D&D, but I also feel like I'm not being taken seriously enough because everyone's being distracted. You can be very understanding that everyone gets distracted, everyone's neurospicy. That's fine, but find good workarounds for what you need to do to keep focus without it being a detriment to everyone else around you,
Mhm.
and not be a bad person and making your DM feel like they're wasting their time. Because
Yeah.
you have to also, again, you have to realize you are on your second DM for issues that are still
Yeah.
happening. How have the players not had a wherewithal of being like, oh yeah, this is a problem. We need to probably look into ourselves and figure
Yeah.
out we need to work on that.
I think, I mean, there's not enough information to really
Mhm.
say. I think, and maybe I'm being a little defensive of those of us with ADHD. I think there is also sometimes a thing that happens at the tables that people aren't as aware of. If you have louder players and they continually talk over your quieter players, those
Mhm.
players are going to disengage.
Yeah,
And
that's true
so
too.
assigning the talkative players a quiet player to role play with, to bring them back in and keep them engaged, takes it off of the DM, but gives you a buddy system where there's somebody checking out for you and being like, hey, quiet player, like, we haven't heard your idea for solving this puzzle. Like,
Mhm.
like, there are ways that you can be bringing people in. I don't think necessarily just, well, focus better is the answer. I think
Right,
there's like,
yeah, I agree with that.
Mhm.
there needs to be a conversation about why are these people not paying attention? Like, what is it?
Mhm.
Is it ADHD? Is it that they've tried to speak up and they've been shouted over? I mean, I disengaged in a couple of games because of that, because I was like, well, everybody here seems to know the rules better than me. So every time I say anything, I get rules lawyered at, and I don't
Yeah.
really care for that. So I'm just gonna be here because I hope it'll get better eventually. But until then, and I mean, sure, that is a sulky behavior. That is not me being a mature adult and saying, "Hey, I feel like I'm being shut out here. I don't feel
Yeah.
like I'm being treated as a fair player." I also think it's totally fair for the DM and for the other players to say, "Hey, like, we like you. We're your friend. It kind of hurts
Yeah.
our feelings a little bit when we're trying to spend quality time with you and it doesn't feel like you're present. Is there something we could be doing that would help bring you in more?
Yeah.
Like I think there's a way to have this conversation that's not you're fucking up, but rather like
Yeah.
we love you and we want to have fun with you. Is
Have a
this
new
still
session 0.
fun?
Have a
You
new
New
session
know, like
session
0.
0, yeah.
so, and you can have a session 0 at any time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like I ended up there was a with that barbarian character, I ended up like having us all stop and say, "Okay, look, why are we playing this game? Like what is it that we want to do? Do we
Mhm.
want to be heroes? Is that the goal? Like do we want a funny campaign? Do we want high mortality? Do we want to be, just throwing bits back and forth? Like what's the plan here? Like what do we like? What makes this fun for us? Cuz I think
Yeah.
it's easy to lose touch. People could get distracted cuz there's a lot of shit happening in their personal life. I was playing D&D when I was getting sober. It was really
Yeah.
hard for me to pay attention because I was going through
Yeah.
some shit, you know? And I was very lucky to have a table where we could talk about that.
Mhm.
And they were very compassionate and we're like, okay, we're gonna have a 15-minute break so that Kitty can run around the apartment complex a couple of times, get her energy out, and then come back.
The
You
zooming,
know?
yeah. Yeah, this is
But
a situation where I think the DM has this expectation that the players should know don't watch TikToks during the game, which I can understand why someone would think that because watching anything with sound and
noise,
visuals
yeah.
Yeah.
is disruptive. So I can understand the DM being like, I feel dismissed. I feel like they don't care about what I'm doing because they're doing this. But if you're not telling someone, it's possible that they might not realize they're being that disruptive. So I think saying, hey, everybody, I can the issue is that there's some distractions at the table. I can we not watch TikToks? Like I think that's a fair boundary to say like, hey, let's not do things with like audio and visuals because it's distracting to me, it's
Mhm.
distracting to everybody. But are you like why are you not like what is the reason you're watching these TikToks? Is it because you don't really care about the game that much, you just like hanging out with friends? Because that's a very common problem I think at D&D tables is what the person actually wants is just hanging out. They don't really care about the
Hmm.
game. Which is not a
A
judgment
bad
on my
thing.
behalf. I think that
Yeah,
is like a thing that people
it
do. But
happens.
other people at the table don't feel that way. And when you have, I think, 6 players plus the DM, that is a bigger group. So you can say
Yep.
like, here's, are do you feel like you're not being listened to? Are you having trouble focusing because the sessions are too long? Are you having da 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 like and talking about
Is
it?
your character not working for you anymore? It could be
Right.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
Is the
It could
story
be
not
that
compelling?
yeah,
Yeah.
it could be
Many
used like,
things.
and that's why I think it's really important. Rather, I mean, for me, my personal approach would
Mhm.
be, hey, it's distracting for me when there are
Yes.
people watching TikToks. I think as much as possible, don't try to be like, we all talked about you when you weren't here, and
Right. Yeah,
we
that's not
decided that sucks.
yeah, that really
ADHD
sucks.
And that leads
people,
to a
especially,
way
we
worse
have
results.
enough issues assuming that everyone's mad at us all the time. Like, we do
Yeah.
not need that. But, like, if you say, hey, like, I want to play this game with you, how can
Mhm.
I make it more fun for you to play this game with me?
Mhm.
Then I think especially doing it as a one on one conversation, so they
Yeah.
don't feel like everyone's judging them, like
Mhm.
I've definitely been at tables where I was like, "Oh God, has my behavior been distracting?" And other people were like, "No, we fucking love it. We love having this meme note taking. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, yeah.
That's really helpful for us." And so it's like, you don't know. I think it's really important to only speak for how it impacts you personally,
Mhm.
um, and say, here are some options. I know Ginny D actually just put out a video specifically about managing ADHD at the table. Um, and so I think that is super helpful because, I mean, one of the campaigns we played 2 campaigns per time we got together. That was 2 4-hour sessions. I
Oh,
was
dang, that's
there
long.
from like 1 p.m. until 10 p.m. with with like an hour dinner break in the middle. that was hell for me and my ADHD.
Yeah,
That's a
Like,
long time.
I do a lot better with online gaming because I can eat, I can wander around, I can play with my cats, and nobody knows what I'm doing, you know?
Yeah,
And
true.
that's been really helpful. It's allowed me to play so many more games because I can sort of do whatever. So yeah, I guess I
I
think
think talking to the players.
talking to each other and coming in good faith. Assume
Yes.
that they don't know that they are being disruptive. Assume that they aren't trying to be dismissive. As somebody who feels dismissed, assume that, you know, that's something that could be overcome. And it might actually be okay. Maybe you just need to like have more physical things for people to do. Maybe minis are important, you know? Maybe sometimes you play a different game in the middle of D&D to like solve a puzzle or whatever. You know,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
maybe
yeah.
there's different interactive ways that you can engage.
I think too, which I'd be interested to hear both of your thoughts on this. I think one thing for me as a GM when I've had to deal with like interpersonal stuff, like safety issues, sometimes that comes up, or even stuff like this where someone's behavior is disruptive, and you're I usually try to assume that people don't know that like it's disruptive. And I think a lot of things, or a lot of times, what tables do that kind of exacerbates the problem, in my opinion, is treating these issues as like being like, we need to have a meeting to talk about this. That's really and
Oh,
almost
yeah,
be it
a
like
house meeting.
yeah. Where immediately you're on edge because you're like, something's going on and I don't know what it is. Instead of just like, when I've had safety issues with the table, um, or something like this, my default is I try to, obviously if it's a safety issue, it's important, it's serious, but trying to address it as not like, we really need to sit and talk about this, but to just be kind of like, hey everybody, this thing came up, someone was uncomfortable with it, they came to me, can we talk about this? No one's in trouble. Like, no one's in
I
trouble, no
think
one did anything wrong, but
I
have a
think what
chill
would
conversation. Yeah, go ahead,
I
Ava.
think something that would help with that is go to each person individually and get like a pulse of how they're feeling about everything. Let your concerns be known. Check to see if they have their own concerns. And if after those conversations are done, if there seems to be a collective agreement of like, I feel like this could be a broader conversation to have with the group as a whole, then you approach the group being like, hey, a couple of things were made clear to me. I want to see if we can take an opportunity to talk as a group about a couple of things. No
Mm-hmm.
stress if you can't make it. We can have it recorded if you want to listen to it later,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
if you
yeah.
don't feel comfortable, don't feel like you're obligated, but something I would like to approach about in a group level. And
Yeah.
then just continue working from there.
I think especially as if you're talking to each person and you're not excluding the person who you view as the problem. Because
Hmm.
like Katie said,
Yeah.
then you're like ambushing someone and being like, we all talked about you. Which I just don't
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
it's
I mean, I feel like it's I want to point out it's not just one person, it's two people.
Yes, it's two people
Mhm.
who are watching the
And
TikToks.
that creates a very different dynamic for me, which is like, first of all, are they just doing it back and forth with each other? Because then maybe it's not distracting for them and maybe it's fine. If
Yeah.
it's distracting other people somehow, but they're not involved in it, then I'm like, well, you don't get to control other people. Like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
there's a certain amount, like, and I mean, again, we don't know that they're listening to the TikToks. Like, you
You
can
could have
watch
them muted and
caption,
just read the captions, yeah.
I
like,
think
so
it is at least
there's
distracting the
some here.
DM, it sounds like. Because the DM is
Then the
noticing that
DM
it's
can
happening.
address it for
Yeah.
themselves and be like,
Mhm.
hey, for me, it's really difficult when there's moving pictures happening. Is
Mm-hmm.
there a way that we could support you in having an outlet that isn't that? Like, here are some options. Maybe we could come up with some other things. Like, having it be, this is my problem that I want to
Yes.
help you fix, rather than you are a problem
You're doing something
and
wrong.
you need to
Yeah.
fix it, you know?
Yeah.
Because, like, I would say if there's two people who are doing this, there is a part of me that's like, that's a third of your group.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
something else happening here.
Yeah.
And like, I'm really curious, are these the only women in the group? Are these
Yeah.
the marginalized people in the group who,
Yeah.
like, I was in a D&D campaign where all of the women at the table, there was like 3 of us and there was like 2 men and the DM, but all of the women had a side chat where we were just like, I swear to God, if this guy fucking steps in and tells me what the rule is again, I'm gonna fucking kill him in real life.
Yeah.
Like, and we
Yeah.
needed that outlet. Like, that was super important for us to like have a place to process where we weren't taking it out on anybody, because it's like we knew that he wasn't doing it maliciously, but we
Mhm.
also needed to have somebody to check in with, to be like, you're seeing
Should
this
I
too,
say
right?
something?
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like you're also seeing it. And like, I can imagine that player is like, but I just really know the rules. Like, he's not trying to
Mhm.
be harmful. So there's like so
Yeah.
many ways that like there's so much more information I'm curious about that would
Mhm.
tell me so much more about what's happening. I think approaching it as like, hey, are we having a good time? I feel like all
Right.
of these questions that we've had so
Yeah.
far could be resolved with, are we having fun still?
Yeah.
And if not, how could we have fun again? What do
Yeah.
we need to make this fun for everybody?
Yeah.
And I
I think
think that,
that's true.
that's the way to solve this, is like, it's because I don't think that is these people's fault,
Mhm.
really,
I'm also kind of
necessarily.
curious, and obviously this person does. This is me slightly on the nosier side. I'd be curious to see what type of things the previous DM did to try to maybe
Yeah.
aid in the situation, or what things they tried that ended up failing. See what happened on their side of things, get their perspective on it, and
Mhm.
then maybe move with that type of information as well to like for better insight, at least from that person's perspective as well.
Yeah.
Because
So
I
I
will
think so.
good
absolutely
luck.
say, having been at tables with mostly like straight white dudes, and then there's been like a little gaggle of like queer femmes who enjoy giggling and having side conversations, and like that kind of nattering is important for our focus. Like, that took a conversation for
Yeah.
him to be like, oh, that's okay. That's not you disrespecting me. That's just how you
Yes.
pay attention.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We are getting close to the time that I said we wrap up. I do still have one more story that I previewed of the DM needs to
Go for it.
chew. Are you both okay sticking around for a little bit longer than I initially told
Absolutely.
you that this would take? Okay, cool.
That's fine.
This story is just from r/am I the asshole. So this is not even from a D&D
Amazing.
subreddit.
Yay!
The story does reference like chewing sounds, but there aren't going to be actually any sounds present. So for anyone who has misophonia, the story talks about that, but it's not, you're not actually going to be hearing any kind of sounds. So this story is titled, Am I the Asshole for Getting Upset When My GM Prioritized Chewing Noises Over My Sensory Issues? I joined a 9-person game of D&D, which already I'm like, okay, this is
Red flag, red flag.
red flag, yeah. I joined a 9-player game of D&D 5th edition recently. We hadn't started yet, and we're all basically joking around about our characters when I lightheartedly went, you guys are awful, after a few people joked about making slurping noises while eating. The GM suddenly got defensive at that, and after I specified I meant it jokingly, but it would actually be an issue if it came up, everything went crazy. I have autism and likely misophonia as well. There was a Google form to sign up for the game which included listing things that might bother us. I did not include chewing or lip smacking noises in it because people eating normally over microphones doesn't bother me, only over exaggerated ones. And if someone was having a snack or something, I'd be able to just turn them down anyway because this is an online game.
Mhm.
This GM, however, apparently wanted to go full immersion. A huge art. It sounds like this is happening during the session 0. Like, this sounds like they're talking. This is during the session 0. a huge argument started over the fact that they, the GM, wanted to make chewing noises while their NPCs talked or while nearby animals were munching on grass. They refused to just specify that an NPC was talking with their mouth full or that horses were nearby and eating hay. These were actual examples they gave. Another player gave the compromise of the GM just warning me when it was going to happen and letting me mute them while other players would catch me up later. I refused this, as I didn't feel I should have to miss out on parts of the game just because the GM had a weird obsession with role-playing chewing. I felt even more validated in this later, as the GM would go on to say not including chewing would mean rewriting lore and encounters, which means the part of the game I wouldn't be able to participate in would be numerous and important. I'm honestly a little befuddled, as I don't understand how roleplay chewing noises could be. Oh, we got some bits.
Oh god.
Yes, boo them! Boo this
Oh my gosh, the boos are rolling in. I think that triggered twice.
God.
It needed it. Honestly, it needed twice.
a good boo. I'm honestly a little befuddled, as I don't understand how roleplay chewing noises could be so important. But I'm also conflicted, as this GM apparently had already struggled to accommodate other triggers and had to completely restart this game because the old group of players had been homophobic.
Leave.
And especially,
leave.
I think they have left at this point. Especially because I didn't say anything about it on the Google form. I was a bit of a dick about it by the end, I will admit, and put in quotes,
fair.
Do I need to give you all my medical records too? So I wasn't the nicest, but this was after disclosing I'm autistic and then basically saying I'm autistic too and I don't have that issue. You should have put it on the form.
You are forgiven. That was absolutely valid. I think would have gone harder for sure. Fuck
it was
this
either
guy.
like I get sometimes forms don't have like a specific place for specific things. Like something for me is I will just refuse. I cannot be in a game where like mind flares are involved or anything associated with them. So sometimes the form will put down what other things have not been listed. And it's like, no mind flares, please. If it's not listed on there, I'll just go to the person and be like, hey, I couldn't find this on the sheet, but just want to let you know. Either do not have mind flares, or if you do have mind flares, let me know so I can not be there for the session. Please and thank you. And that's it. But
yeah. Also, I'm so confused by like, I'm sorry. Why? It is a core part of this campaign that horses chew hay.
This is lore? Is this a story about like the most stereotypical form of gluttony? What is happening here?
But also,
what is this campaign?
The fact that it's not just because the player was like, you can describe someone, like you can say this person is talking with their mouth full. The player apparently was fine with that. It was just literally making over exaggerated slurping noises, and the GM is like, that is
no, I need that to live. Like
that's such a big part of the lore of this world. I can't negotiate on this.
Yeah, I hope this person left.
I feel like this GM is jerking off to whatever this is.
Yes.
Someone
I don't understand any other reason, and it's fucked up if that's their reason, but like there is no world in which any like that sound effects are not a part of D&D unless you choose to have them be, and that should be flexible. Like that I don't understand. That is such a weird hill to die on.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just want to highlight. Go ahead.
I gotta say, the first red flag is 9 players. The second red flag is this has happened before where people have left his game. And like the third red flag is, oh, that's a trigger for you. I'm gonna do it harder.
Yeah, I think so.
All of those are bad.
Mila in chat just said 100 floors of slurping, which is referencing the last over-the-table game
God,
with 100
yeah.
floors
Oh,
of
gosh.
vampire sex. So this is...
Ugh.
So that's maybe it's the
Yeah.
same GM. Yeah, I think there's something interesting. Obviously, this GM is completely out of line. That doesn't make any sense. There is multiple things. One of if, because the player basically is like, am I in the wrong because I didn't mention this on the forum? So is this person being, I should have mentioned on the forum. If I'm GMing something and someone forgets to put something on their lines and veils, and then during the session 0 or at any part of the game says, like, hey, I have to, like, this thing came up that I can't handle, I wouldn't be like, well, you didn't put it on the form. Like, just absolutely wild. And yeah, so I think that's one thing. I do think sometimes there are situations where a player will have a trigger that the game hinges on, and it is within the GM's right to say, like, for example, Ava with the Mind Flayers, if a GM had a game that they already had done everything for, and it was like, this is the main big bad, not every game's for every person. So that's, reasonable. But
and that's fine. There's a conversation with that, and if it ends up not working, cool.
Yeah.
Good luck, everyone.
This is saying, like, slurping is it's non-negotiable. The game is built on it.
I will say, until it got to that specific point of just like, this is gonna be my hard on for everything, I was very hung up on the fact that this is a starting party of 9 players.
Yeah.
Like, I've been in games where, like, there's guest stars, and so then the table becomes 9 people just for, like, an episode, but,
Yeah.
That's just no.
I mean, I was playing in a game where, like, it was a huge core part of our party that we manufactured and sold drugs. Like, that was basically what we were doing to make money. Like, that was like our passive income.
Yeah.
Right? This was that we were living in a city, and so, like, this is like how we sort of had our fingers in a bunch of underworld contacts and stuff. So, like, it was pretty important. We had somebody at the table say, you know what, this was fine for a while, but I'm dealing with somebody close to me dealing with addiction issues. Yeah. Can we just, like, let that be quiet for a while? And it was like, absolutely, hell yeah. Like, it's more important for you to play with us than it is for us to talk extensively about substances, like, that's not actually what this is about. So I'm so confused about this. Just feels like taking it more seriously. This sounds like a GM with a power kink, and like it sounds like somebody who is not going to take triggers seriously. And like, it's it's funny that it's slurping here for us, for whom it's not a big thing. But like, that is a GM in my mind that is absolutely going to end up doing explicit sexual assault or explicit racism, or like, that's just a tendency of, I want to do this thing and I want you to witness it and participate in it, whether or not you want to.
It sounds like somebody who is kind of against the idea of having stuff off, like, not allowed in games, and is reacting this way because they're resentful of not being able to include certain stuff. That's how it sounds to me, not knowing this person at all. Yeah. But yeah, the fact that it's about chewing, like, the GM should have waited for a different hill to die on, even if that was the resentfulness, in my opinion, because that's just, no one is going to take that seriously. No one is going to be like, wow, the GM really wants to include this in the game, so you should have put that on your form.
Honestly, I ended up, like, I was so bewildered that I was like, I have to go and look at this myself. Like, there's got to be more context. And I am honestly fucking shocked that there is someone who's like, yeah, you're the asshole.
Some of the comments did say that this person was the asshole of the GM. Yeah, I didn't like write that down or take note of it. But yeah, I noticed that too. I was like, this person is, a couple
again,
people.
the only like thing that's like a small like caveat for that is if you aren't able to put it in the sheet itself, I would have just messaged the person privately just to let
Yeah.
them know. But that's not really someone's fault. It's just it's
Yeah.
something that happened and maybe just like slipped their mind. I wouldn't put that blame on them, especially if they
Yeah.
pointed it out later.
It sounds like they just didn't think of it as even being something that could come up
Yeah,
and mentioned it
no
jokingly,
one
and
would.
then the player or the
No
GM had
one
like a
would.
meltdown.
I would
Yeah.
never think to be like, hey, DM, don't do
Right.
exaggerated slurping.
Horses
Because
don't
who
have
would
horses
think
chewing.
about that?
There is a comment that is kind of like, this is such a weird thing to even think of mentioning
Yeah.
that it wouldn't occur to me to even mention it.
Yeah.
Like,
I
and
think
I mean, I've come to learn that sometimes there are things like, I've had to, I would assume that the kinds of people I play tabletop role playing games aren't going to enjoy graphic descriptions of violence to children. But you
Yeah.
know what? I'm not going to
Sometimes-
take that as read. I'm just going to underline it just in case. And there have been situations, I think, Taylor, you and I have played a game where I was like, I can't really handle graphic depictions of violence against animals. I don't think that's going to
Yeah.
come up. And I think you were really gracious to be like, oh, does that include a spell happening to an animal that maybe confuses them? Which is like, yeah, that's a really good thing to include and ask about for more information. And no, that wasn't really what bothered me. I just like, had read a lot of reviews of Midnight Mass and was like, nope, I don't
Yeah,
like
not
this.
for
I don't
me,
want
yeah.
that. No, thank you.
Yeah.
And like, I just wasn't in the mood for it that day.
Yeah.
So like, there are themes that I think it can be difficult to avoid. I mean, in our city theme, in our Sharn campaign, we did have some very serious conversations about like, hey, like some of what we're going to be dealing with here is this hostility towards goblinoids, which is going to have some uncomfortable mirrors to racism, to xenophobia, to anti-immigrant sentiment. What are some ways that we could take care of each other in that? And like, is that okay? That's something I really am interested in addressing, but like, I just want to make sure that's cool with everybody.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really gracious, because we were able to be like, okay, here are ways that we're cool with it, here are ways that we're very not cool with it. Here are things like, another great example, that GM, this is the campaign where we had to keep protecting all of our NPCs
Yeah.
because every time we stopped looking at them, they would die or something horrible would happen to them. The first one was a sex worker because one of our campaign, like one of our players was a madam at a brothel, and it was one of her workers who was the first to be killed by this group that we were going to end up dealing with. And in sort of the vagueness of an NPC dying, it was like, of course, that makes sense. This is a character close to this person. It just happened to be this person.
Yes, right.
But two of us were sex workers who were like, hey, you might not be aware that there's like a really long history of like murdering sex workers and fridging women, and like this is actually like it's we can understand why this happened, but like, can we not have that be a regular occurrence?
Yeah.
Like violence against sex workers there's a limit there. And he was like, oh shit, I hadn't even thought about it. Like it wasn't even something that was on his radar. So it's like, I think that there are ways in which like it wouldn't have occurred to us to put that on the form because it seemed like it's unlikely to come up unless we bring it up. But I can also totally understand that like he did that in good faith, not understanding that background, or like how personally it would impact us. And also, we didn't know each other that well. So, like, we weren't all open with each other about our histories, Like, there's things that, like, you just don't know. All of that, I understand. I have a lot of compassion for accidentally triggering somebody or accidentally triggering yourself and, like, all of that. I just don't understand how slurping is the thing. What campaign does it require that specific sound effect so intensely that you cannot do anything else? I don't understand.
The only thing I could, like, just jokingly, the only thing I could think of is this campaign is being paid for by a patron who really,
Right?
really has a thing about slurping noises.
Yeah.
And you know what? Then you should be disclosing that this is
Yeah,
something
that
you're
has to
selling
be
on your
disclosed.
OnlyFans.
Yeah,
Because
that's true.
otherwise, that's a whole other area of non-consent where you're
Lord.
forcing people into your kink
Yep.
without letting them
Actually,
opt out.
so this is a perfect time for me to say, we are gonna wrap up the stream. But both Ava and Kitty have said during our break that they wanted to come back on for all the sex stories, which there are just so like if you've ever been on
After
RPG
dark.
horror stories, yeah, there's so many messy sex stories. So definitely we'll do that the next time they're on. I'll bring out the nasty 100 floors of vampire sex, not that specific one, but you know things like it. But before we completely wrap up, I want to throw it back over to each of you to let us know where else people can find you, things you have to plug, things like that. And we will start with Ava.
Hello, my darlings and dears. It's your Madam Ava here. You can find me anywhere at Madam Ava Couture. I'm still mainly on Twitter because that bastard who has daddy issues has not completely destroyed the thing. But in the meantime, in between time, you can catch me tomorrow on Exquisite Corpse Presents at 1 p.m. EST for a Thirsty Sword Lesbian campaign where I played a nervous daughter, one of the nervous daughters of King Arthur, and that's going to be a heck of a time. And then at 3 p.m., I'm going to be on Rainbow Roll Fest for an Equinox campaign, Equinox one shot. At 3 p.m. EST, and that's going to be raising money for MAPS, medical aid for Palestinians. So that is going to be a wonderful time. That entire channel is going to be doing a charity thing. On Wednesday, I'm going to be on a different stream. Not a lot of details right now, but I will promote those on my socials when it comes time for that. And then on Thursday, I'll be on Fuzka's channel at 7 p.m. EST for Awakening, where we're battling through purgatory. We just lost our satyr, but he did not get eaten by a hag, so that's all good. That's good.
With a lot of slurping noises.
With a lot of slurping noises.
Had to make a lot of slurping
Chickens, but not slurping.
Kitty, what about you? Where can people find you? What else do you have going on?
Yeah, well, I am available on every social media thing except Twitter because I got kicked off for impersonating libs of TikTok last year. No regrets. Elon can suck it. But you can find me Kitty_Striker on Instagram, officially Kitty Striker on Facebook. I'm on Blue Sky and Wire and a bunch of other things. I don't know. I don't pay attention to a lot of them, to be honest. So like Instagram and Facebook is kind of where I've settled for the most part. In April, my book, Say More, Consent Conversations for Teens will be coming out. I think that's April 26th, but you can pre-order it on Amazon. I also recently did a podcast with the Roll Report, which is a podcast that talks about like what your favorite type of characters to play are, what class you like. I think it's called Classing Up the Joint is like my section. And it's a just starting podcast, so you can find it on Spotify. The person who runs it is actually going to be DMing me in a Wild West campaign where I will be playing a snake oil salesman, which I think will be very fun and very silly. Other than that, I don't do a lot of actual plays. I would like to. So please contact me and have me on your actual plays. I'm a lot of fun. I respect boundaries. And I won't make any slurping noises unless you pay me to.
Yes, that too. I will do it if you pay me.
Perfect. Yeah.
Real quick. It is Black History Month, so donate to the Black people that you know and love, me included, and see y'all in Women's Month in March.
Yeah, I have Ava's link tree or beacons, I think, linked. So click
Give me
any of
money.
those. Yeah, give me
Yeah,
money.
absolutely.
As for me, you can find me online, most places, Roll for Felicity. A week from today, I'm going to be running a one-shot of the game Warren Guard, which is, I think the Kickstarter just launched today. So if you like things like Dragon Riders of Pern, that's kind of the vibe of the game. It's belonging outside belonging smashed with fate. It's really cool. I'm really excited to
Ooh.
run it. So yeah, come back next week for that, and then pretty soon I'll be announcing stuff that I'm doing next month because I kind of took an unintended hiatus from streaming and I'm getting back into it. So I think that's everything. So we are going to say goodbye for now, and I guess we'll be back again sometime in the future with these two for dirty, sexy stories.
For more judgment.
For more judgment. We'll see you
Hey.
all later. Bye.
Wow.
Bye.